And this might be the last one I have time to do today, just because again my son had an injury yesterday, so I don't want to keep him here too long.
Okay.
Okay, so a bit of an unusual way to
play
a bit of an unusual start to the game, although nothing wrong with you. What white is doing is just usually white on c5 will play d5 or knight f3.
Nick is a big fan of these Catalan setups. He recently read a book. He's a big fan of Magnus, who's been playing the Catalan a lot, obviously.
Yeah, Magnus does like to put his bishop on g2 in a lot of different ways. So
yeah, Nick is aware of these Benoni ideas with d5, e6, but I believe he was wanting to try something new today.
Okay, so let's go through the opening. So this is a very solid setup for white, not overly ambitious. Soren, can you please don't touch the camera, okay? So, okay. And not the most ambitious setup for white, but absolutely nothing wrong with it. And actually a good, like if he's playing especially against a younger player, it's sort of it's very solid, and black might be wondering what to do. So he plays a4, which a4 is interesting. It's not really the move I expected, but I think I like it. He's trying to grab space. You know, the move a5 could be coming next. I feel like black might want to respond. Well, he played rook b8, which is not a bad move. That prepares to play the move b6 by moving the rook out of the harm's way of the bishop. I also wonder if at some point like black might just want to say, okay, you've kind of wasted a lot of time with your pawns here. Maybe I try to open up the position a little bit, play e5 for example, and and maybe at some point the pawn on a4 does lead to some weak dark squares for white. So I feel like that might be an interesting way to play, and especially if white plays d5, black can play a move like a5, and then their knight will come to c5, and they'll have a nice square. And this is probably a quite good position for black. Nothing special, but just a quite good position.
I often play Benoni setups in response to the London, which is not like this position, but
the bishop on f4.
But it has the same pawn structure. So in your opinion, it's okay to give up the b5 square? Because one thing I don't like is having the knights targeting my backwards pawn.
Yeah, so it's sort of a trade-off. So if you give the b5 square by playing a5, if you have the c5 square for your knight, it is okay, and that pawn won't be easily attacked by anything except for that one knight. So I think the pawn will likely be okay in this particular position. London's a little bit different because your bishop is on f4, so maybe there's more pressure in that case. Okay, so black plays rook b8, castles, knight e8. So I don't love the way black played this. I feel like it's just a little bit too slow, too passive here. Rook e1. I actually would have liked to see Nick play a5 here. I think it's actually pretty annoying for black to play this position, because if he plays b6, we can just play a6, and now that bishop is kind of a dud on c8, and white will have knight b5, threatening that a7 pawn. So I feel like the move a5 here would have been a nice sort of continuation to the plan that he started with a4. But okay, he played rook e1, which is a good move in the sense that rook could easily be useful if there's ever a trade of pawns here and it opens up. So let's see what happens. I'm also curious if he's going to play b3, bishop b2, or how he intends to develop that bishop. So b6, knight to b5. So again, I feel like that move would have been a lot more effective. Although it still is interesting, because on a6 he has knight a7. So this is an interesting idea. He's going to get the bishop pair this way. It's rare that you see the knight get to this square in so few moves. But it does make sense, because after bishop b7, which is sort of forced, actually he's winning something here. Yeah, okay. So knight b5 is a really good move. Sorry, I underestimated this move. So then b6 here was a mistake. Maybe a logical follow-up to the knight e8 would have been to play knight c7 and at least cover that square on b5 so that you could swap it. But as I said before, I think black has already gone a little bit wrong here.
Maybe what Nick was worried about was a5 maybe seems too slow because a6 and then the knight doesn't get in. Maybe.
Although usually when you get a5, a6, that's a nice structurally that's a good thing for white.
Could white maybe follow up with a5 himself and then knight a4, knight b6? Maybe if this knight on d7 leaves.
Yeah, in some cases for sure. It's also that black won't be able to free themselves up easily by pushing their d pawn after. So So yeah, b6, knight b5. Knight b5 now is pretty annoying because the rook can't come to defend this pawn. So he's got a real problem here already, which is it's quick, but it's sometimes it doesn't take too much. And so after a6, knight a7, good move. He's threatening to go knight to c6, fork the queen and rook, bishop b7. And now at first I thought he was just going to win the bishop pair by playing knight c6, bishop takes c6, bishop takes c6, with a little advantage to white. But he does have much stronger here. He takes on b7, rook takes, and knight c6, which attacks the queen. When the queen moves, the pawn on e7 falls with check. So now white has won. Oh, Soren is going to join us for the analysis. So king h8. And so white has won sort of a clean pawn and also has a really nice square on d5 for their knight. So this is a really good position for white. Queen c8, b3. Makes sense to try to bring the bishop on the long diagonal here, eyeing the bishop on g7. Yeah, so now it's a position where white really should win this game up a pawn for no compensation. Even white has maybe some positional advantages, but I'm curious to see how Nick finished it up. Queen d3. So I don't know if I might not have wanted to trade this pair of knights. I might have just played the knight c3 or knight f4, because it feels to me like by taking, you're giving black a little bit of time. So he could try something like queen h3. It doesn't actually do anything here. White still has knight coming to f4 and probably no real difficulty. But still, I feel like maybe it would have been better to let black trade. Rook b1, okay. Rook e7, bishop b2, rook e4, d5. So he decides to play d5. It's a good structural move because eventually here white could try to chase that rook away from e4 and play for e4, e5, and probably eventually can achieve this break. So this should be good. But I still feel like he white had a bit more control over the position a few moves ago. So now I got to be a little careful. Knight g4 is a threat, so he decides to swap it. But I really feel like here, things went from really pretty much winning for white to actually still have to really work hard to win this. Knight f4, queen f5, rook to d1. So okay, that's a good move. And white is still very, very solid here. Queen d7. So black, I guess, did not like the possibility of f3 and trading queens. Oh, and now, okay, nice move. So knight e6 is a nice move. So maybe black could have tried something different here. Well, let's see. Maybe knight e6, he can still... So I'm curious why black didn't try to play rook to e5 here and just not give up any material. White, I guess, probably has... Well, f4, the rook can still sort of dance around, and I don't know... Now the knight is actually sort of in a bit of a precarious spot. So maybe rook e5 would have been a good fighting chance here. Because I don't really see... I mean, white may just have to go back, and then black can do something. White is still up a pawn and, has certainly chances to win this game, but it's not over. But instead, black took on e6, and after that, it's going to be down in exchange, and I think the position will be reasonably easy to convert for white after that.
I believe at the time we engine analyzed rook e5, and it turned out that there was a very complicated line, which was black wasn't getting crushed yet. Mm-hmm. It was very complicated.
Okay, yeah, I mean it doesn't look to me like there's going to be a crushing line here, but there could be something. I mean, I think f4 rook h5 is sort of the first test, and I don't know. There might be some other way to play. Like you could try. I mean, I wonder if something like g4, pawn takes e6, f4, but no, that looks too loose. Yeah, black will have chances there. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe there's something that the engine sees that I don't. But yeah, that would have been.
Would you like to turn on the engine? Maybe just take a look.
Sure.
All right.
It might have resized our board, but if it did...
So knight f4 is fine.
Yeah.
F4 is going to be just slightly better for black, but...
yeah, I mean, that's what I was looking at, and there's not really any complications there. Just f4, rook h5, knight g5, and then, black will just take on g5, and that's going to be okay for them. So, yeah, so not totally clear. So knight e6, Black trusted, I think, Nick a little bit too much when they took on e6. And so now after...
Let me just turn this
let's turn the engine off.
mess with the...
messes in our size, I think. Okay. Pawn takes e6, rook takes e6, and now the problem is that it is just a clean exchange, and really Black doesn't have any counterplay here. And that d6 pawn is still a backwards pawn. So queen d5, nice move, threatening probably queen a8 check over here in the corner and taking that pawn on a6. King g7, f4. Again, a good move. I think you might want to play e4, e5 soon. Queen e7, e4. Yeah, e4. Maybe I would have just played king f2, protect my pawn, and try to kind of slowly build this up. e4, bishop d4, king g2. That's okay too. At some point, also white could simply take on d4, and that's going to be a dominating position.
I'll have two pawns. Yeah.
f5, king f3. Okay, king f3 is fine. The position is still very solid, and again, at some point, he could take on d4. And now Black, I guess, blundered with g5. Queen takes f5, and now I think it is pretty.
Yeah, that was resignation.
Yeah. So. Yeah, interesting game. I mean, it's funny. Like it kind of shows that you don't want to give up, because even though Black lost a pawn very early, then the position was not very clear. About 10 moves later. So it's not always easy to convert these positions. It's possible to let it go. And for me, that knight d5, knight a7 maneuver was really nice. And then after that, it's just sort of trying to keep control. I think where white kind of lost control is maybe when they started. By taking a knight on f6, which immediately kind of let all of Black's pieces come into the game, instead of maybe playing knight f4 and knight c3, which would have been a bit more solid. So
one of the things
nice game by Nick.
Yeah, one of the things you don't want to do when your opponent is cramped is encourage or engage in trades too much.
Yeah, I mean it's I can see why he traded, and it might be because when you're up material, you do want trades. But yeah, the flip side of that is when you're constricted, you trade. Of course, it also helps. So it's chess is a game of nuances.
Just hard.
Yeah. But okay, I hope this was interesting and instructive for people. We'll try to do this again more frequently. Keep coming to play at the Manasota Chess Center, and you get a chance to get your games analyzed by a grandmaster, and we'll do this again. We'll do this again soon.
All right. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, Mike.